be good stewards of your time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Carrie Dillard. I'm the Programs and Public Policy Director here at the Chamber. We want to say thank you for joining us this morning for what is the first seminar and as part of our Small Business Month celebration. We have a lot of things planned over the next few weeks, including a different seminar every week, and also the launch of the third year of our Small Business Cohort Program. I would love to talk to you more about that program after today's seminar, or join us on Wednesday night from 4:30 to 6 at Paducah Beer Works for some pizza, and to get to know some of the cohort mentors and instructors and past graduates and learn a little bit more about that program. So feel free to join us tomorrow night for that session. Our topic today is solutions for business planning and HR. Our presenters are Aaron Harned, business coach for the Small Business Development Center here in Paducah, and Jill Hobbs, the president of HR Consulting Solutions. We're so grateful that they're here with us today to share their knowledge. But first, before we begin, I want to say thank you to our seminar sponsors, F&B Bank and Living Well Radiology. These two businesses have been our sponsors of our small business seminars for a number of years, and we're so grateful for their partnership. It's through the generosity of sponsors like these that we can offer these programs to our local small businesses at no cost to you. And so I want to invite Terry Lundberg, CEO of Living Well Radiology, to say a few words, and then Andrew McGlennon with F&B Bank.
So happy to welcome you here today, and it is our pleasure to sponsor this. As a small business in our community, we are passionate about helping support you all to succeed in your businesses. We are an independent imaging facility, and we have 2 locations. And what we do is we offer radiology services to anyone needing those in our community. And actually, we reach 5 states and over a third of the state in Kentucky alone.
Wow.
So I've been in my role for almost 12 years, and without a doubt, since COVID, staffing has been the biggest pain point in our business. Carsey is mostly in charge of our hiring now. And I just want to congratulate you on spending some time today to learn from these 2, because it is definitely a vital component to helping your business succeed well. And you know, if you have great folks working for you, that's going to really make your business thrive. So welcome today, take notes, and thank you for attending today. It's a great use of your time.
Thank you, Terry.
And I'll be quick as well. Just like Terry said, F&B Bank is proud to support these programs. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce and the programs they put together like this are just phenomenal for what's going on in the community. So we're proud to be part of it and help with the success of that. So we'll turn it back over. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Andrew. And so I'm going to turn the program over to our presenters today, Aaron Harned and Jill Hobbs. And I hope that there are lots of discussion after they speak.
Fantastic, and good morning to everybody. Like Carrie said, my name's Aaron Harned. I'm from the Kentucky Small Business Development Center. So we'll talk just a little bit about what the Small Business Development Center is to start, and then we'll kind of move into business planning. That's the area that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll turn it over to Jill to talk about HR a little bit. But from a business planning perspective, the Small Business Development Center is a statewide organization funded by the Small Business Administration and the University of Kentucky. We also have additional partners throughout the state of Kentucky that help to fund our program and allow us to provide no-cost, confidential business consulting services. So I work with entrepreneurs who woke up this morning and decided they wanted to start a business. I've got folks who've been in business 50 plus years, and anybody and everybody in between that we work with. But a large portion of the clients that we do see are in the early stages of feasibility, business planning, initial capital seeking, and the startup phase of business ownership. So I want to talk just a little bit about business planning and kind of the role that we play in helping folks determine the feasibility of their businesses and then kind of move into getting that initial capital and getting a business started. So whenever we start talking about feasibility for businesses, it kind of breaks down into two categories. We talk about feasibility first, about the possibility of the demand in the market for the businesses that we're looking to create, and then the financial viability of whether or not the business is sustainable. Those are kind of the 2 areas that we work with most entrepreneurs are, and really whenever we're in those very early stages of, hey, I'd like to start this business, well, first we need to decide, is there a market demand for this business? Is there an opportunity available? Is this something that makes sense in the local market, in the e-commerce space, whatever target customer, my client is looking to seek. We want to make sure that there's the opportunity for the business to be successful, but then we also need to have a good conversation about what the financial viability is. With most startups, there's an amount of initial capital that needs to be sought. Not everybody's got just the money in their bank account to bootstrap a business. So whenever we start talking about borrowing, we want to make sure there's financial viability, that we can borrow for the capital we need to start a business, and then have the ability to create the revenue to be able to repay that. So those are kind of the way that we break those things down. And whenever we talk about feasibility, and Jill's going to talk about it some here in a minute, but operations is a big part of what we're looking at with these small businesses. So one of the very first questions that I ask small businesses who come and talk to me is, if we're starting a new business, do you need employees? And is there a possibility we can pivot this business so you can do it by yourself? Finding employees is very difficult in the current market. Having the revenue and initial cash flow for a business to be sustainable with multiple employees can be very difficult. So we want to make sure that if we're establishing small businesses, there is the possibility that we could do it as a solo entrepreneur, or we can do it with a very minimum staff, because even if we have the capital available to hire those folks, they're not always available to actually be hired. So looking at what the operational efficiency of the business looks like is a big part of that initial feasibility study. Looking at what the staffing needs are. If the project aligns with personal and professional goals, that's a big thing we'll talk about here in just a minute. And then we also need to analyze the risk that is inherent for the clients that I'm working with, to make sure they understand, especially if we're borrowing for initial capital, the risk associated with the business that they're starting. So a lot of times I try to have my folks do a cost-benefit analysis, and just as an internal exercise, a lot of times having the opportunity to do that cost-benefit analysis and look at what they're borrowing for and the expected return on investment is something that a lot of entrepreneurs haven't necessarily done. They've said, I want to start this business, I've got the opportunity to make all this money, but they haven't really looked down and started to crunch any numbers off of the amount of capital that they're going to invest, the amount of capital that we're going to borrow, and then what that potential return on investment looks like, and then what the timeline for that return on investment looks like, because normally we're not seeing something just come back automatically. We've got a period associated with it where there's some overall inherent risk that the client needs to be aware of and fully ready to be saddled with before they jump into entrepreneurship. So doing a cost-benefit analysis is something we really like to focus on to make sure everybody understands the position that they're in. Personal considerations is another big thing that I like to talk about with folks. Depending on what the business model that they're pursuing is, we want to make sure that their personal life, their family life, their personal financial situation aligns with the business that we're looking to start, the business that we're purchasing, or the business that we're currently operating. And if it doesn't, we want to try to pivot that business model so it fits into what their personal life is. I know that small business ownership, it takes up a large portion of our time, but it shouldn't be 100% of our time. Several of my clients, we work to find ways to separate ourselves slightly from the business so we can try to get some enjoyment out of life, because otherwise you're just working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's not sustainable in the long term. So trying to make sure that the business model we're working with entrepreneurs, and then also existing businesses, the business model that they have aligns with their personal life. And if it doesn't, then trying to look for pivots that we can do from an operational standpoint so that they can make more time for themselves, so that way we don't lead to burnout and business failure and those type of things. So making sure that business models align with personal considerations is a big thing that we do. The next thing we talk about a lot is business considerations, and looking at, is the location available for the business that you're wanting to serve? Is this going to be an e-commerce business? If it is, is that website, domain name that we need out there? Is the physical location out there? Are we purchasing a physical location? Are we looking to lease a physical location? Any and all of those considerations around the space that the business actually occupies is a big part of that initial conversation. We also need to determine what resources we need to be able to sustain the business. Retail businesses, restaurants, those kinds of things, it's fairly easy to get inventory for those types of businesses a lot of times. But if we have a more specialized business model where we need specialized inventory, where we have to have specialized equipment, are those resources available? Are they easy to access and something that we can replenish and make available to the customer all the time? Another important thing we talk about in this time is kind of legal considerations, licensing, different zoning requirements, all those different things that business owners might not be thinking about during those early stages of planning, to make sure that they've kind of thought, the full picture. We're seeing everything. We're not just focused in on, hey, I really want to start this business. I'm going to get it open. I've got this dream of small business ownership. We want to make sure they're looking at the full picture and making all the considerations that they need around legal considerations for their business. And then we always talk about market considerations, making sure customers have their target market identified, who their target customer is, what the population of that target customer is. With e-commerce businesses now, we have the availability to sell to a much larger demographic than just local communities. But we also want to make sure that we can diversify our revenue stream so that hopefully we do have some local business. We have e-commerce business if that's applicable. Making sure that there's a full, robust market for our businesses to go into is what we want to make sure is available, and really getting them to determine what that target customer looks like, and then determining what that population of the target customer is. And then we have businesses really try to look at competitive analysis for who their direct competitors are, others in the marketplace selling similar goods or services, but also what indirect competitors do you have? What threats are there to the market that you're entering into? What opportunities are there for competitors to diversify or expand, and what opportunities do you have to diversify so that way you can have competitive advantage over others in the marketplace? From there, once we've kind of gone through all those conversations and I've worked through, all those different questions with clients or even existing businesses, because I interact with a lot of existing businesses who just start and they don't know any better and that they haven't thought about a lot of those things. So once we kind of work through all that, I'll spend a lot of time with clients working on business plan development. So nobody writes business plans for fun. I say that all the time, but it is an important part of business operation in my opinion. So from a startup perspective, it's very rare that we'll seek initial capital without a business plan. It's almost unheard of. A commercial lender wants to see a business plan, an investor wants to see a business plan. Any situation where we're seeking capital, there needs to be a business plan available. From an existing business standpoint, business plans are especially important if you've got multiple people inside the business. That way everyone can see very well what the goals, what the objectives, what the opportunity of the business looks like. So that way everybody's on the same page. It's really difficult in a lot of situations when you start to have multiple employees if everybody's not on the same page and working towards the same goal that we're able to be successful. So business plans kind of have two purposes. From an internal perspective, to keep everybody in the business on the same page. From an external perspective, they're almost completely necessary anytime we're seeking capital for a business. Even with a lot of the existing businesses that I work with on expansions, lenders still would like to see some kind of business plan. I'm not saying we do a full business plan in all those situations, but at least putting together an executive summary for those commercial lenders to look at. That way they understand where the business is at currently and also where the business is going with the expansion. So these are the sections of a business plan that we normally work on, with an executive summary that's just got summarizes everything that's in the plan. Company description, market analysis, description, products and services, marketing and sales. Marketing and sales plan is a specific area of business planning that I work extensively with existing businesses on, because a lot of times they come to me when sales are depreciated, when cash flow is strapped, and we go and I ask, what does your marketing and sales plan look like? Let's take a look at that. And they say, well, I don't have a marketing and sales plan. Well, maybe that's the reason sales are a little bit strapped. Maybe that's the reason cash flow isn't coming the way it used to, because you're not examining the way we're converting customers into cash, and we're also not examining the way we're using our marketing dollars, not just advertising dollars, but overall marketing dollars to be able to convert more of the general public into customers. So those are important aspects. We also look at those other things that we've talked about. Operations, by this point in the conversation, a lot of my clients have really thought through all of the facets of the operation of their business, and we're able to outline those and put down good information onto paper about what the operations of that business look like. It also gives the opportunity, like I said, for if this is an internal document, it helps put everybody on the same page, that this is the way things are supposed to be operating in the business. Not necessarily that they are operating this way, but this is the way we'd like them to be operating in the business. It helps align everybody for a common goal in that situation. Talk about management, and then maybe the most important parts of a business plan that I spend the majority of my time working on are financial projections and then funding requests. So I would say probably about 75% of the time that I spend working with small business clients is working towards some kind of funding request, whether that's loan, whether that's loans from commercial lenders, whether that's we're seeking outside investors, or that we're trying to prepare a business to be sold and make it a valuable business to be sold. That's the majority of what I spend my time doing. So whenever we start talking about the financial side of it, developing financial projections really looks like these steps below it, of looking at what the fixed asset requirements for the business are, itemizing, in the case of a startup business, what our startup expenses look like, what our fixed expenses month to month are, and we try to assess all of those expenses before we look at sales. So I don't want any client to come to me and say, well, I think I can create this amount of sales per month. What I'd like to do instead is let's figure out what expenses that we have, what debt service we're going to be taking on, and then let's figure out a way, if it's possible, for you to make that amount of money. But don't bring me an amount of money that you think you can make every month, and then let's figure out how to spend it all. Let's figure out how much we're going to spend, and then let's work backwards to try to figure out if it's possible for us to be able to make that amount of money. So with all that being said, what we'd like to do at the Small Business Development Center is help each and every one of you. So like I said, I work extensively with entrepreneurs and startup clients, but I also have a ton of existing business clients, those who I've helped start in the past, and then also existing businesses who come and work with me. There's very little limitation to what the Small Business Development Center can do for you. I always tell folks there's really only two things: is I can't prepare your taxes and I won't give you legal advice. But short of that, we do just about everything else. I spend a ton of time working with folks on business plans, financial projections, but then adversely for existing businesses, we do financial analysis of financials. We do record-keeping system improvements, marketing and sales plans, really anything and everything under the sun that a small business can interact with, we'd like to be available to help with. So the thing I mentioned at the front, I mention it again, I'll say it over and over anytime you hear me talk, is we provide no-cost confidential business consulting services. You'll never be asked to pay for anything from the Small Business Development Center, and everything you share with me is completely privileged. I can't share it with a third party unless you give me written and verbal permission to do so. So we want small business owners to feel confident that even if they're in crisis, they can come to us. We're happy to assist them, to get them back to a place of financial viability, and then help them pivot in the future to be successful. Or if you're looking to start a new small business, we'd be happy to work through this process with you of determining feasibility, making a business plan, seeking initial capital, and getting your business open. So I'll be here to answer questions after Jill talks, and then I'll be glad to hang around. And anybody who'd like to meet one-on-one, I'd love to get in contact with you and set up a time to meet.
Good job. All right, good morning, everyone. As Miss Carrie said, my name is Jill Hobbs. I am the president and senior consultant for HR Consulting Solutions. I have been in the human resources field my entire life. I started back in 2004 when I graduated with my MBA, so about 20 years is what I'm going on. I've served as a consultant for several years and also the head of HR for very large organizations, but my passion is working with small businesses just like you all. I am blessed to have finally started my own company. It's going really, really well. I have several clients, current clients right now sitting in this room. I know the title of today's seminar is how to start up and staff up. I could talk about all things HR. I could talk about Apple for 10 minutes, right? And all I have is like 10 minutes. So in your folders, I want to just quickly go through some of the pieces of information that I have provided you with. This is over and beyond the scope of today's seminar. But if I'm in your shoes as a small business owner, and what I see from a client perspective is truly compliance issues. You need one, Terry? You're welcome. And we've got plenty of time afterwards to ask questions, but by all means, jump in there and ask me questions at any point in time. So on the right side of your folder, you should see something that says Compliance Overview. Okay? First things first. Again, we'll talk about staffing here in a little bit. When it comes to compliance, a key component is figuring out what labor laws, state and federal, you have to adhere to. There's certainly no rubber stamp approach. It depends on whether you're in the healthcare industry or if you're a part of the Department of Energy, right, and you're a federal contractor. But what you have here, and if you look on the second page, it'll show you, I've broken it down by the size of your organization. So on that second page up at the top in blue, it says employers of all sizes. Out to the left, it shows you the law, like the first one is IRCA. Then the next one, EPA, EPPA, Fair Labor Standards Act, OSHA, and ERISA. So all employers, whether you have 1 employee or 1,000 employees, have to adhere to these federal laws. This isn't even Kentucky state laws, this is just federal, high level. Go to the next page on the right, you'll see a few more. USERA, the Consumer Credit Protection Act, and Jury Systems Improvement Act. Then we get a little bit into the niche. So now we hit employers with 15 or more employees. So if you have 10, 12, 13 employees, 2 employees, this won't adhere to you. But if you have at least 15 employees, you've got to comply with the ADA, which is now the AAA, the Americans with Disabilities Act Amendments Act. Also, GINA, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, talks about not requesting information based on a candidate or a current employee's genetic history. And the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which is also a state law in Kentucky. So if you have 15 employees, those are the federal laws you have to comply with. And of course, the next page shows you Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. That's the biggest one. Then we go up to the next threshold, which is 20 employees. So if you have at least 20 employees, in addition to all the things I previously said, you now have to adhere to the Age Discrimination and Employment Act and COBRA, which is the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, which talks about continuing those benefits after an employee separation. Then we hit 50 or more employees. This is a Hail Mary. This is your oh crap moment. I literally have some clients that stick around the 48 employee threshold just because they don't want to be catapulted into these legal waters. It's a big deal when you hit 50 employees. I would say a majority of the folk in this room don't have 50 employees because you're a small business. If you do, you'll see things like FMLA, Affordable Care Act, so on and so forth. And then you hit 100 employees. Okay? So again, this is just a summary snapshot. If you don't understand what these mean, you can Google it, you can call me, all right? This is your first step to just federal law compliance. The next thing in your packet is child labor laws. I just had this come up last week where a very small local client of mine, a really good friend, called and said, hey, I want to hire the 16-year-old kid. Can I hire him? Well, it depends. What are you going to be having him do? You're going to be having him operate heavy equipment, heavy machinery. You're going to be in a deli slicing the meat. He can't operate the equipment in the kitchen. There are very strict regulations in Kentucky with regard to child labor. So what this is an actual poster that has to be hanging up in your organization. This is one of the many federal and state labor law posters that have to be put in a conspicuous place in your company. So a break room or a kitchen would be a good example. And also, by the way, any area where you're interviewing a candidate, you need to have your labor law posters in that area as well. So labor law posters are not just for active current employees, but also for potential candidates that might be joining your organization. So again, up at the top, you can see it talks about the age, whether they're 14 or 15, they can't work before 7 a.m., they can't work after 7 p.m., except you can see the summer hours there, right? Then the 16, 17 threshold, and then 16 and 17-year-old with parental permission, which there's actually a document where I have a 16-year-old. I had to sign that and get him kind of authorized, if you will, under the law to work later than 7 o'clock during a school night. All right, to the next one. I have put a copy of an example position description. This is actually a position description I wrote on Friday for a current local client. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but in 19 years, I have found this to be one of the best progression of a job description. You'll notice at the top that it puts the FLSA status on there. FLSA is the Fair Labor Standards Act, so that's your non-exempt and your exempt, which I could go down that rabbit hole and spend about 6 hours talking to you about that. But you'll see I've got the position summary, the essential duties and responsibilities, supervisory responsibilities. If they don't have any, write none. They need to know when they're applying for the role if they're going to be managing anyone. On the back, these are your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So what kind of education should they have? Do they need to have 5 years of administrative experience? Do you want to make sure they have at least 2 years of bartending experience because you're hiring a bartender? What are you looking for in this candidate? Required licenses and other miscellaneous necessities. Valid driver's license. That should be on every single one of your job descriptions. This one, Class A CDL, and then the pre-employment drug screen and physical. If you require pre-employment drug screens or physicals, which you all should, you need to put that on here. You'd be surprised how many people look at that and go, yep, I'm out. You will save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money. Yes?
How do we handle pot now we used to go across the room?
What?
How do you handle marijuana and pot drug screening?
So, don't let me forget to talk about that. I've got that coming up. If I forget, let me know. And then physical requirements. The whole purpose, well, I shouldn't say the whole purpose, but a big purpose for having the physical requirement aspect is, especially if you have more than 15 employees, the Americans with Disabilities Act. You need to be able to have documented evidence that your employee is required to lift, bend, push, pull, crawl, stoop, carry 20 pounds occasionally, 50 pounds rarely, climb a ladder. You need to have all of that information in here. Okay, it's very, very important. Questions about this job description? I'm trying to go quick for you all. Oh, can you get it? Is it down there? Is it good? Okay. Got it. I think it's on there. Okay. All right, the next thing I put in your packet is new hire reporting requirements by state. I took out a majority of the states and only put in some of our neighboring states to Kentucky. So Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio, and Tennessee. Did you all know that if you hire an employee to work for you, you have 20 days in the state of Kentucky to report that to the state of Kentucky? Did you know that? Most of my clients don't know that. All right, I've put information in here for you so you can see, depending on what state you're in, who you report it to, how you report it, what information has to be reported. I see this all the time with small business owners. You don't know what you don't know. And it's the little things like this that can really put you in jeopardy. All right, on the left side of the packet, I've also provided you with an employee handbook compliance checklist. Now, this is something that I have created myself. It's not anything we're going to go through. This is not what today's session is about. But again, I thought if I was in your shoes, this would be a good thing for you to go back and skim through your handbook and see which boxes are checked yes or no. Now, bear in mind, go back to the very first compliance sheet that I showed you. If it talks about FMLA here in this little checklist and you don't have at least 50 employees, you don't have to adhere to the FMLA, right? That was on your very first sheet that we went through. This will be a nice little temperature gauge to see where you're at. New voting leave laws that just came about. Nursing mothers, are you giving breaks to let new mothers express their breast milk? You got to by law. There's a myriad of things like that. So this right here will let you know what your grade is with regard. Your employee handbook is your Bible. You should have one. All right. Last but not least, did you know? I'm going to hit these really quick. I think we've got a few minutes left. So I literally opened up Microsoft Word last week and just started typing. What am I seeing out there? What are the phone calls that I'm getting? When I go in and do an internal audit for a client, what are the oops that I see, right? Not necessarily things that are going to shut down your organization, but these things do add up in the event that you're audited. So let's go through them real quick. So did you know, during interviews, you shouldn't ask the candidate, how old are you? Or when were you born? If you need to make sure that they are at least 18 years of age or at least 21 years of age, then that's what you ask them. So if on your employment application, if you're asking, what is your date of birth? That's a huge no-no, violates the ADEA, Age Discrimination Employment Act. So check your job applications, make sure your hiring managers are not asking questions with regard to their actual date of birth or age. At the end of the day, you shouldn't care if they're 42 or 32. You just need to make sure they're at least 18 or at least 16, whatever that threshold is you're looking for. Charlotte's hiring a bartender right now. We got to make sure they're at least 21 years old. We can ask that. Are you at least 21? Don't ask where you were born. What's your native language? Don't ask if they're married. Don't ask if they have any children. If they offer this information up during the interview, fine. I would put down in your notes that they offered the information up. You didn't ask that. Okay, or don't even write it down. And then lastly, of course, do you have a disability? Have you ever had COVID or whatever, right? COVID, that happened all the time. That came up all the time during the pandemic. Are you or are you not allowed to ask about COVID and whether or not they've had the vaccines, et cetera? What I will say about disability, what you should be asking them is, here's the job description. Can you perform the essential functions of the job? Someone comes in for an interview as a receptionist and they're in a wheelchair. You pretend that they're not in that wheelchair, okay? They can do the job in a wheelchair, but you don't ask them, hey, I see you're in a wheelchair. You think you can do this job? We're going to go through and see. If you're supposed to climb a ladder and you're in a wheelchair, then you are not physically able to perform the essential functions of the job. You're not violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was required on your job description. And when an attorney calls you up because they sue you for violating their ADA rights, you go, nope, right here. Got to climb a ladder. Makes sense? They're not qualified. It has nothing to do with their disability, but yet it has everything to do with the disability because they can't perform the job functions, right? Did you know you should conduct background checks on all candidates after a contingent employment offer? Negligent hiring lawsuits are a real thing. So, never, never, never have a candidate fill out the Form I-9, the W-4 state or federal withholding. Don't have them fill out the authorization to do a background check or a drug screen. None of that needs to be done until you have given them an actual offer. And I would always, always, always use the word contingent. So what that means is, Carrie, I'm offering you the job to be my HR assistant, and this is a contingent offer of employment. It is contingent upon you passing and completing the physical exam and the drug screen. That way you can rescind your offer. Next one. You should have a clear policy and procedure against substance abuse. So this comes up to your question right here. And we may have to stay after class to talk because I only got a few minutes. What I will say is, as most of you probably know, back in November, Governor Beshear enacted this executive order, right? Signed this executive order that permitted medical marijuana or medical cannabis in Kentucky. There are, I think, 22 areas, if you will, 22 questions that they have to answer, and they all got to be yes, right? To be legitimately legalized in Kentucky. The takeaway point for you all is, how are you going to handle that if you have a current employee pop positive on a random drug screen, or a post-accident drug screen, or a reasonable suspicion drug screen? How are you going to handle that? It needs to be in your handbook. It's completely up to each individual employer. There's no state law or federal law that says you have to allow it. Same thing for Illinois. It doesn't matter if they come across the river or not. If you want to smoke pot, I'm not here to judge you. You do you, but you can't work for my company. You choose. It's got to be in your handbook, though, okay? I have one client right now that says, yeah, absolutely. If they're on medical cannabis, then they have a medical need to be on cannabis. As long as they're not high when they come to my place of employment, from a safety standpoint especially, then I don't care, that's fine. Put it in your handbook. As a best practice, you should develop and provide an offer letter to all candidates hired. In that offer letter, you should include your job title, whether or not they're exempt or non-exempt, what their compensation is, what their official date of hire is. Maybe they've negotiated PTO, put that in there. Signing bonus, retention bonus. The burden of proof is always on you all, right? And communication is the key. So again, if I'm coming to work for you, I want to make sure that what Terry told me is true, right? That I'm actually going to start out with 4 weeks of PTO instead of the standard 2, that my rate is $22 an hour. I want to see all of that. And then you should make me, the candidate, acknowledge that I've signed it and read it. Okay, put all of that in writing. If you plan to have a new hire sign a non-compete, make sure they do so on day one. In Kentucky, which by the way, the courts hate non-compete, so be very careful there. But if you are going to have someone sign a non-compete, do it on day one. If you wait until weeks 4, weeks 5, year 2, year 3, then in order for it to be legit under the law, you have to give them something of significant value. And I mean pretty significant. So Carrie works for me, and she's been here 2 years, and all of a sudden I want her to sign a non-compete, a non-competition agreement. If you leave me, you will not go after any of my competitors, right? You will not work for any of my competitors. You will not go out for any of my customers. I better give her $600 a month car allowance. I better give her an extra 2 weeks of vacation every year. I better give her a $5,000 check right now. There's got to be an incentive for her signing it. Otherwise, in Kentucky, they go, yeah, well, I'm sure she did sign it. You coerced her into doing so, right? She thought she was going to lose her job if she didn't sign that non-compete. So I see that often. It will virtually be null and void if you don't do that. So always, always, always have that ready to go on day 1 or even day 0. Have them review it. That way they can sign it right on the day that they start. Let's skip a couple because I know I'm running out of time. You should audit your new hire documents every year to make sure you're not using expired forms. I saw that 3 weeks ago. They were using a 2020 W-4 form, so just check those forms, make sure they're not expired. Put a reminder on your calendar every January 31st, just to check and see if there's a new one out for the current year. You can be fined up to $1,000 for every single I-9 form that is incorrectly completed. And I mean the dates on it, for example, have to be 05, 09, 2023, not 5, 9, 23. If you're audited, bam. Little things like that. It's crazy. Make sure that you're getting the appropriate documentation from them. You guys have seen that. It's a list of acceptable documents. The whole point is to make sure that they truly are a U.S. citizen and that they're authorized to work in the United States. You should never, ever, ever say, hey, your first day is tomorrow. Bring me your driver's license and social security card. That's a big no-no. You're not allowed, nor should you tell them what documents to bring. Charlotte's shaking her head. She says, you give them the list of acceptable documents, email it to them before they start if you want to. They pick something on list A or something on list B and C. So they can give you just a passport, list A, or they can bring the driver's license and social security card, list B and C, okay? Form I-9s are a very, very, very big deal. I do audits on those all the time. Let's see. Oh, and you should keep I-9 forms at least 3 years or 1 year after the termination or separation of the employee, whichever is longer. So 3 years or 1 year after termination. We already talked about the new hire reporting. You can make employees participate in direct deposit. Again, that should be in your handbook, so you can force them to do that as long as they have the opportunity and ability to find a local bank that doesn't charge them any fees, which clearly is not an issue here in Paducah. All right, I'm going to do 2 more minutes, and then you guys can kind of go through this on your own. If an exempt employee works any time during the week, they must be paid for that whole week. You can require them to use PTO. Okay? And you can discipline them for excessive absenteeism. But you work for me on Monday, you've already blown through your PTO, and you're not here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, I got to pay you for the whole week for an exempt salaried employee. There are exceptions such as gross misconduct, egregious safety offenses, disciplinary suspensions, things of that nature. I see that all the time. If you've got a COVID policy, change it to a communicable diseases policy. Put it all in there. Measles, mumps, COVID, it all should be under the same umbrella. Incorporate that into your employee handbook. Try to minimize those separate standalone policies. Remove any language in your employee handbook or anywhere that refers to a probationary period. We are all on probation all the time. Kentucky is an at-will state. If you say, I've got you on a 90-day probationary period, that basically means for 90 days you better follow the rules, but on the 91st day, you're good, right? Do not use the word probationary period. You can still say, at the 90-day mark, we will reevaluate your job. At the 90-day mark, you will be eligible for a merit increase. Don't use the word probationary period anywhere in your handbook. Let's see. I'll stop here. Separated Kentucky employees should receive their last paycheck no later than 14 days after the date of separation. So what they like to see is whenever your normal next payroll cycle is, you will pay me out for all my hours worked. Most people are at least 1 week in arrears, if not 2, if you're biweekly payroll. But if I quit, I'm ticked off, I quit, and Terry gave me a laptop to use to work from home sometimes, and I haven't given that back to you yet. I'm going to, but I'm pissy right now, and I don't want to see you, right? You can't withhold my check. I hear it all the time. Can I hold that check until they bring that in? They got uniforms, they got laptops, they got cell phones. No, you may not. Now, you can threaten, you can do all the things, right? You can get a cease and desist order. You can do, there's many, many options. One option that you can't do is taking that paycheck and holding it till they bring back your property. Can't do it. All right, there's others on there. Obviously, we're going to be running out of time, and we want to let you all have time for questions. So, questions for me or for Aaron? Yeah.
How do you determine full-time equivalents? We have several that are three-quarter-time employees.
Yep. So what you're going to do is you're going to calculate it just like you would for a normal full-time employee and divide it in half. It is literally that simple. Even if you have 3/4 of the time, right? 3/4 and 3/4, 1.5. Now you've got 1.5 equivalents. It is literally that simple. That's a good question.
Do you have a resource for background checks?
Yes. Yes. There is a company, and if you want me to get you the information, just give me your card or write down your email and I'll get it to you. They're Reference Services Incorporated. Charlotte can attest to this. RSI, they're out of Evansville. I've used them since 2008. They are the best in the industry. Only 2% of background screening firms in the United States are accredited. They are. I'm not talking about joining like a SHRM member or a chapter member. They've actually gone through the 2-week on-site audit. They're phenomenal. They do background checks, drug screens, the whole 9 yards. They'll do reference checking too. They're very, very good. I can get you directly to the people to get you set up and help facilitate that. Yeah, RSI. Don't you agree, Charlotte? They're fantastic. You get a
Automatic email out to the potential employee. They go in, they do it all themselves. So that way your hands off on that.
Yeah, I don't know how much time you're spending, but she's exactly right. If you've got to input all the data, let's say you're doing verification of education, verification of previous employment, verification of your radiologist's accreditation or license, you've got to input all that stuff, not with RSI. You put in the candidates, I think it's just their date of birth, their date of hire, and their email address. Click the the enter button, and it sends it to them. And they fill in all the information. They put their driver's license, their social security number, all the things in there. And then you get an automatic email with the results. It's fantastic. Other questions? Yeah.
Is there any kind of documentation or forms needed for hiring virtual assistants?
What do you mean?
Well, say I need to hire a virtual assistant to do, I don't know, some document or some paperwork.
So hiring them remotely,
Right.
allowing them to work remotely. So no, there's no reason to do anything different. I would just, if anything, make sure you have everything in writing. So again, your offer letter, make sure you provide them with that in writing. Other than that, no. Are you providing equipment for them? Like laptop and things like that? Okay, then no. If you were, you would again want to have that clause in your employee handbook about separation and company equipment and no right to privacy, that kind of verbiage.
But I have to provide them with all the regular hiring documents.
You got it. They're a W-2 employee, right? They're not a 1099 independent contractor, right? They're a W-2 full-out employee.
No, I would really consider them more of a 1099.
Okay.
It's just like on the ad.
Okay. If they're a 1099 independent contractor, what I would do is have them send you their W-9, and I would get a copy of their driver's license and then have them like go through your typical, you can have independent contractors go through background checks and drug screens, by the way. OSHA says you have the right and the responsibilities of protecting your entire workforce. So I would be consistent in that regard. That makes it even easier. There's no W-4, there's no I-9, there's no nothing for an independent contractor.
Hired through these agencies that have like
then they hold and bear all the responsibility for that. And you should make sure that they have the indemnity language in your contractual agreement with them, hold harmless language for you that basically says, I'm paying you, be like you hire me as your consultant. You're paying me good money per hour to make sure that what I'm telling you is right and that I protect your workforce. I have $1 million worth of insurance on myself for that. God forbid I screw up, right? So yeah, so easy peasy for you.
I was going to make a suggestion of the 1099.
Oh. What other questions? We still have 11 minutes, and I will stay after as well if you have something really specific. I know staffing is really, really hard right now. That's one of the services that my company provides as well, is helping with all things recruitment and retention. I'll say this, using Indeed is very, very expensive. If you don't know this, as you go through and you start to put in the information for a job posting with Indeed, there is the option to pay per candidate, per application that you get. It's very expensive, but here's the caveat. They give you like 72 hours for small businesses, 72 hours to review that application, and if you don't like it, you hit reject, and you don't get charged for it, and they'll send you a new one. Did you know that? Yeah, Indeed will cost you an arm and a leg, but there are little carve-outs, little routes that you can take as a small business with Indeed. Indeed is starting to get really saturated, so what we're finding now from a recruitment standpoint is you all have to not only recruit, but headhunt. Recruit's fairly easy, but you don't get a whole lot of bang for your buck. Recruitment is where you put a job posting out there and you go eat some cheesy poofs on the couch, drink a glass of wine, and you wait and see who applies. How's that working for you? Headhunting is different. Headhunting is where you use your sphere of influence, your contacts, all the free resources that you can. The chamber posts it on their website as well. There is a company called Jazz HR. They are the best human capital management platform for applicants that I've ever seen that is rather inexpensive. So if you just kind of get on their website, call, you can talk to someone, they'll give you a direct quote. What that will allow you to do is upload that job description into Jazz HR one time, put all your pre-screening questions in there, which you should have pre-screening questions. Why waste your time on candidates that are not qualified? Put all the main questions you want to know. Are you able to work this shift? Are you willing to comply with our drug screen and pre-employment requirements? Do you understand that the average rate for this position is $18 an hour? Do you have at least 5 years of bartending experience? Have you ever supervised anyone before? Think about the Excel. How would you rate yourself from 1 to 10 on Excel? Put all those pre-screening questions in there. It'll take you about 45 minutes to do it. Then bam, you hit the enter key from Jazz HR and pew, it's automatically put on all these job boards for you. LinkedIn, Monster, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, Indeed. So if a candidate's applying on LinkedIn, it's still in one place for you, Jazz HR. If they apply on Indeed, it's still in your little portal, Jazz HR. So you don't have to go into all these separate systems to look for these candidates. They come into one place. You can email them, you can text them through Jazz HR, do calendar invites for setting up interviews. It's one of the best ones I've seen for small businesses. Yeah?
What do you recommend? I work with a lot of startups. They have like 2 employees, usually 1, and then they're growing to 2 to 3, and they're really early stage, and this is a huge burden.
Yeah.
What's another option?
Hire me.
So really, benefits and
Yeah.
all this stuff. It's just
Yeah, in all seriousness, it is very scary, and that is exactly what I do. Even if it's just a 30-minute quick discussion, I can come in and I will be happy to do that completely free of charge. I do that all the time, kind of like giving you a rating and letting you know, look, This is a best practice. This is not something that is a legal requirement. Put this on your list, but way down the totem pole, right? But now this, woo, girl, you better fix this quick. And here's how you do it. And oh, by the way, I can do it for you if you don't have the time or the resources or the knowledge to do it. But yeah, it's scary to look at all of that.
I will say Jill helped us make sure that our handbook is in compliance. The money that you spend up front is better than any legal fees that you might incur, or one lawsuit, or just one blemish. Tell her, I call her all the time. I'm like, this is the way I should be handling this.
Yeah.
So it's worth it to get a second opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I always say, call me when you need me. There's clients I talk to almost every week, and there's some I talk to every 4 or 5 months. They just, hey, can you come in and help us terminate this person? Will you come in and audit our handbook? What's this whole FLSA, exempt, non-exempt thing? Yeah. Yep, it's a daunting task for sure. But again, look back at that compliance sheet, because depending on your size, there's a lot of federal laws you don't have to adhere to if you're really, really small. Yeah. Other questions? Terry, you were saying you're having like a lot of problems with hiring. What are you finding?
Well, maybe frustration. One of the main ones is they'll sign up for an interview, there'll be no show. Or they'll say all the right things, they get hired, and then they'll not come back from lunch. It's the entry-level positions,
Ah.
or they'll quit after 2 weeks. You know, it's like, I said, I didn't answer the phone at my last job.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that's one of your responsibilities.
Yeah,
So there seems to be a work ethic issue.
getting ghosted. Do you ever do any type of workforce surveys or even exit interviews, even if they've only worked for you for a month?
We have done excellent.
Those typically are very helpful. Because again, is it my compensation? Is it the culture? Is it my manager? Right? People don't leave jobs, people leave people. Right? Or are you not compensating me appropriately? Is it the shift? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with calling a separated employee and saying, hey, this is Charlotte from Atomic City. I just need to pick your brain for a minute. I'm trying to do everything I can to be the best employer in Paducah and have a heart, right? No good deed goes unpunished. But can you help me understand, from your perspective, your point of view, your opinion, what are some aspects of our company that we can improve on? Maybe your health insurance benefits aren't what they need. Well, when's the last time you had underwriting done? When's the last time your broker went out and shopped your policy? If you have a renewal every year and it's the same thing, Humana, that's a problem. You should be getting quotes from United, from Anthem, from all the big players. Other questions, concerns, anything?
I appreciated Aaron as well. I learned a lot of valuable information. We wrote down your phone number, email, so.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'd love to meet with any and all of you. And like I said, I work with entrepreneurs who woke up today and just rolled out of bed and said, I'd like to start a business, or folks who have been doing it for a long time. So there's always something. There's never a time a small business doesn't have something that we can improve from an operational standpoint, from a financial standpoint, or maybe it just helps to have a fresh set of eyes on the same things you look at every single month, have somebody different look at them. I can do industry benchmarking, I can do financial analysis, all of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, unlike Jill, you don't have to pay me anything. So.
Thanks a lot.
Have you found that sometimes that a business that maybe has been around for a long time, maybe that's the hurdle because they've always done it the same way, that you can kind of come in and show them that there's a new, effective way?
Well, I think, and I'm going to give Carrie a plug here, but I think the Fix This Next cohort that we've done has been a great opportunity. And Doug and I were just talking about it because they did it last year with us. And it's a great opportunity to talk to other business owners and get an outside perspective and see what opportunities you might not be seeing for your business because you're too close to it. So I'm more than happy to do that with businesses and do that every day. But at the same time, 18 to 20 fellow business owners in the city of Paducah, McCracken County, who all want to see each other succeed, is a great opportunity to get some outside perspective, bring your problems. We break them down into levels and talk about different hurdles that small businesses are facing, whether it's sales, whether it's profit, whatever level that you're kind of in, we go through that together. I'm there to give advice. Carrie's there. Chris Wooldridge is there to give advice.
That's
And then,
great.
like I said, 15 to 20 other business owners who are all very invested in seeing other businesses succeed. So that's one of the best things about our chamber here is we really have active members who are for everybody. I've got 13 counties in Western Kentucky that I'm responsible for. We're very blessed in McCracken County and Paducah to have a chamber with members who are genuinely for each other. It's not something I see in all 12 of my other counties. So, just a little plug for Carrie there for the Fix This Next cohort. But absolutely, there's a lot of times where I'll make a suggestion or I'll just ask a question. Even if we're doing financial analysis and I'm getting quarterly financial reports and I'm like, well, I'm seeing trending data in this expense category that's going up. What's changing? And the business owner will say, I don't know. That's what it always does. Why does it always do that? Why is it like that every year? Why, if our cost of goods sold is trending upwards 2% every quarter, we need to be making a price adjustment? Just those little things that they might not be looking at because, like I said, every month, every quarter, you look at the same documents, the same numbers, and even if the cycle of your business is the same every year, it never hurts to have an outside perspective to just take a look at things and see where maybe we can make small pivots, small adjustments. 1 to 2% adjustments can make a big difference in overall cash flow. And at the end of the day, cash is the name of the game for all small businesses. So,
And it lets you know you're not alone.
absolutely.
Right.